Faith, we have much misinformation about. Most people think faith is a belief with no evidence, or a trust with no evidence, because that's where ego lives. It lives in the mind. It lives in the emotional nature. And a belief is something of the mind, and a disbelief is something of the mind, based on protection, based on making sure that you don't lose, that you don't get diminished. And so it's with trust. It's about trusting or distrusting, has to do with gain or diminishment. I can trust you to give me something, or I don't trust you to give me something. Faith is something else. Faith is the quality within ourselves that can recognize truth. It's that within ourselves that can experience or sense the truth of something, regardless of how it appears, regardless of it being a benefit other than the benefit of experiencing that quality within ourselves that can recognize it. Faith is a quality of being. It's not a quality of the mind. It's not a quality of the emotions, although there may be associated with it. In faith, there is automatically a willingness to trust, but it doesn't use trust or distrust as a measure of the truth of the faith. For us Westerners, this is very difficult to access. We've been conditioned with ideas of blind faith and Kool-Aid and gurus. We've been conditioned by what to avoid and what not to believe and not to trust. We're missing the mark of what faith really is. And what is the capacity of our faith? It's proportional to our listening. Some people have a little faith. Some people have big faith. The difference between how little or how big your faith has to do with how vested you are in protecting yourself or securing what you want. The more vested you are in yourself due to pain or suffering or fear, or due to ambition or desire or conquest, that will determine how much faith you have. Faith is the quality that allows us to undertake something or pursue something, a relationship or an effort, without needing an outcome to be a certain way. Faith is something that proves itself in each moment of the traveling towards something, where the something we're moving towards is not as important as the experience of the unfolding of moving towards it. It is something that validates itself in our own experience in any one moment. If the outward evidence doesn't fit the structures of our ego that remain, then we lose our faith. We begin to distrust. We begin to become suspicious. We begin to either doubt ourselves or doubt the circumstances or the people. If your faith is big enough, it doesn't make any difference about the people. It makes no difference about the circumstances, because there's a validation that's occurring within you when you take the actions aligned with your faith that have nothing, it's not dependent on those. And this is what it was for me. By the time my spiritual teacher showed up, I had already moved into alignment with the song enough that when I saw my teacher, when I saw a video of him, there was this complete and total recognition that he was a demonstration of the truth that was unfolding in me. And I didn't care what his personality was. I didn't care what he did or didn't do. I didn't care about his ethics or morality. None of those things were important. All I knew was the recognition of the truth that occurred at that moment and would continue to prove itself over time. And I went to live with him here in Terra Anomaly for 6 years, off and on. It was here that faith that had me say goodbye to Sachimai and my family and my business and everything that I held and treasured. And instead of going off into the desert myself to discover what was happening, it was this ability to choose him as the means by which I could stay true to what had come to me. And that absolutely proved to be the case, even over the period of the 6 years I was with him, and all the ordinary human doubts and questionings arose over the time when I began to meet the person that he was. And I began to meet the day-to-day of living in this relatively deprived circumstance for a successful Westerner, and not lose track of that inner purpose. And it would show up not as a mental process. It would show up that I would stay put rather than leave when the urge to leave was most intense. And the moment after, or the day after, the faith would be validated that that was the right action. That I stayed true to the original faith. And it kept truing itself no matter what the outer circumstances were. And I realized that the person who was making this more real was the person who was staying in the process of what they had originally recognized and originally committed to. Now, what allowed me to do that? It was my sincerity. So that's the second item on the list. Sincerity. What is sincerity? Sincerity is an alignment within our being, between our head and our heart and our body. It is where we have, in the course of our life, lived sincerely to bring the best good for ourselves or for others. It is the part of ourselves that has self-respect, self-regard, a self-respect and self-regard that gives that self-respect or self-regard to everyone, if they deserve it or not, without a right or a wrong. It's a self-regard that isn't self-serving. It's where we can honor ourselves as we are, with our limitations, with our defeats, with our error, with our distorting actions that keep us in diminished condition, but can recognize that through all that you were always sincere. You were always trying to come to a higher good, to a greater good, even if you weren't successful. From there, we align our personhood. We align how we act with how we feel, and how we feel with how we think, and how we think with how we act and how we feel. We align ourselves in life to be the higher good and to bring the higher good into life. So sincerity allows for the faith to penetrate into the body, into the heart, into the emotion, into the drives, into the mind. It allows the faith to be integral. It allows it to hold up and not devolve into distrust or disbelief. Why? Because we have this self-regard, this self-respect, trusting in ourselves, having faith in ourselves. Many of us are limited from coming to sincerity because of so much guilting and so much teaching of right and wrong and what you should and shouldn't do. And we lose our ability to trust ourselves because of all the stories and the programming and the condemnation and the evaluations that we have been subject to, and which we have been subject others to. So we lose the ability to have faith in ourselves or to trust ourselves. One of the greatest conditionings of mankind has been this idea of sin or shame or guilt. At a very fundamental level, it's not allowed us to have faith in our own beingness. So we can't always have control over our sincerity. We have to enter this path with as much sincerity as we have available to us. We enter this path with as much faith as we have available to us. And then that brings us to the third principle, which is this principle of surrender. So what is surrender? Surrender is a willingness to step out of our position or our point of view over our perspective in any one situation or moment. Surrender is the letting go or getting off of our viewpoint or our position that we take about ourselves or life, to let what's there show itself. If it was an error or if it was correct, if it was right or if it wasn't right, to be able to see the lessons of life as they unfold with as much openness and willingness that we can muster. To be willing to be wrong and not have to spend our days endlessly trying to prove our case to ourselves, to be right. To be willingness to not know, to be willing to be uncertain, to be willing to be confused or not know what to do, to stay in that place of trepidation or doubt or confusion. So surrender is a willingness. And the more sincere we are and the more faith we have, the more surrender is available to us. And the more surrender is available to us, the more sincerity and the more faith that we'll have. They all integrate with each other. They create this willingness, this openness, this sincerity to change and to live different than what we have in the previous moments or years, to come into existence in a new way, to allow for us to step out of our old way of being, to come into a new way of being, to come out of doing and more into being. Each serves the other. Let your faith be pure, candid, and perfect, not full of conditions, tainted by ambition, pride, vanity, mental arrogance, vital self-will, personal demand, desire for the petty satisfactions of the lower nature. These are obscured. These are diminished, and they cannot in themselves be enough to burn upward to the higher truth, to ascend out of our habitual way of being.